voice again, 47. We got worried when you didn't get back to us.
It was just a little thing requiring my attention.
We've got an extremely delicate mission for you, if you're interested.
Always interested. Just send me the briefing.
Is that what I've seen? Run! Help!
Five of us started out in what you call the demo scene in Denmark. This is young kids doing reverse engineering, doing swapping discs at that point. They just wanted to do games, and you couldn't do that in Denmark in mid-80s, so they drifted somehow, west over. It ended up in UK, ended up in North America. And 10 years later, they came back to Copenhagen. We decided to set up a company. Most of the publishers were pretty interested in what we were doing. It was, at that point, a very preliminary Hitman character.
It started out, way different from what it is now. First of all, he had hair to begin with, and he was a lot more cartoony than he is now. And then mainly due to, I guess, the visions of Rasmus Kjær, who is our creative director now, he turned into this much more sinister and cool character, and he ended up being this guy who's a clone of a multitude of genes from, ingenious people.
They are guys who ended up in a French Foreign Legion, and these guys at some point team up to create this perfect human being using their own genes. And the premises for the character was that it should be a badass character, a politically non-correct character, a provocative type of guy, although very limited space for him to develop because he wasn't a real human, he was a clone.
Dr. Ortmeyer created Mr. 47. No one else has successfully created a Class 1 human clone. Dr. Ortmeyer literally wrote the book.
If you look at the Hitman games, then there isn't that much story in the first ones. It's just the stuff there is just cool. So right now we have all these little pieces of history that we sort of opened up during the different games. We can always go back to that and tell a little more about that, so we can sort of patch on the story and things that were out in the dark before you didn't really know what was going on there. You can hint just a tiny little line somewhere in the history, and that makes the whole thing come together if you are a fan and if you dig the story and all that. It's such a big deal to do a game that initially when you do a new concept, you have so much focus on just making the stuff work that you can't really spend that much time getting to know the character, the story and all that. So the first thing is just, yeah, we did a game, fine. And then you have some calm because a lot of the initial design things you have to come up with, you already figured out. So you don't have to spend time on that, so you can spend more time into delving into the background of the character and all that stuff. And it's a little bit of a cliche, but it always works pretty well. But we have the hunter become the hunted. So we have this semi-failed clone who is like tracking down Hitman all throughout the storyline, and who he, of course, will have a confrontation with at some point.
Letter for Mr. Julio.
Thanks. Code red. You forgot your tip.
That's all right.
I insist. On the table by the bathroom.
There was a lot of ambition behind Hitman Blood Money. We wanted to really do something new with the Hitman franchise.
Our goal was to, when you grab the controller or keyboard, whatever, and played the game, everything had to feel new. Like, it had to feel 100% like this is a new Hitman game. So we First of all, we changed the control system to have a more elaborate camera control system. We also developed a new engine, not a patched up previous engine, but a new render engine. And we have a new script engine, and we have new AI behavior totally made up from the bottom. And all that makes what was the tools that we needed to make the coherent gameplay that we wanted. Like, we have so many new features that if everything was sort of anarchistically implemented, then it would just become too confusing from the player perspective.
We actually succeeded in building a new crowd system where I think in the end we have the system can actually manage 3,000 characters simultaneously on the level. So the minute you walk into the street, there's just people everywhere.
There's a lot of work put into the base AI. If you just take some guards and put them into the level and start shooting, they will start to gather their friends, and they will find out where's Hitman, what's all this noise about, what is going on, and they will start attacking, gather their friends, maybe call for backup if Hitman has a more powerful weapon than they do. They will start to look for cover points where they can hide if Hitman is shooting back. All that as a base AI. But then again, there's another layer on top of that base AI, which are different from level to level. That's all the special characters in the level. They behave in several ways. So the drunk lady has a special way of coming around, and all those. The reception girl has a special way of. So that's a lot of that is scripted or code specifically for that level. But it's all laying on the base AI.
When you're walking through the level, you shouldn't be in situations where all of a sudden 10 guards come rushing at you, guns blazing, and you say, why did that happen? This time around, it's much better in that regard, that you go somewhere where you're not supposed to be, people come say, hey, you get out of here, or you'll find clues in how other characters on the level behave, what they do, where you can go, what you can do, and put in a lot more of these hints.
It's a completely new aspect to the Hitman game, that you actually you gain notoriety as you play through the different levels. Civilians will begin recognizing you if they get a good look at you.
One of my colleagues were playing through the game a few days ago, and he was gaining a really high notoriety. And it actually means that the NPCs, the characters in the world, they respond to you differently. And he goes into the level, into the White House, and goes through the metal detector, and in come some tourists. The tourists, they spot a newspaper laying on one of the discs with a picture of Hitman, and one of the woman in front just looks at the paper and looks at Hitman and say,
"Holy Christ, it's that bald psycho from Vegas!"
She turns around, just runs out of the White House.
There are a number of ways to bribe your way out of the notoriety. So you can bribe the witnesses to get rid of them, and you can bribe police officers, and you can actually also more or less buy a whole new identity, which will more or less just clear your whole notoriety. The money is used for bribing, but also, and more importantly, you can use them for upgrading your weapons.
His weapon arsenal consists of 5 weapons, and for each of those guns you have around 10 upgrades, which makes your weapon a lot better to use, more precise, more steady, and more firepower. The shotgun, I made a silencer, which is not normally something you would see on a shotgun. And I really hope that people will enjoy playing around with these custom weapons.
With Hitman Blood Money, we actually made a game where Hitman has been taken to a whole other level of a lot greater interactivity. Hitman can push people, he can headbutt people, there's fire extinguishers.
Now he has much more flexible movement. He can jump, he can climb up ledges and scale walls and all that. And when we sat down, the programmers, we was sitting down and talking about how should we do this.
Motion capture is a way of recording motion. We have actors and stuntmen who's wearing a special kind of suit which has little silver balls attached to the joints, and some very special cameras which are surrounding the space where we are recording, going to record the exact position of these little spheres, and that we get back as a digital data and can use it on our own skeleton.
I admire your work.
We made some screenshots at a very early stage where Hitman was having a gun behind his back, and that weren't really a feature in the game at that point. And then people really, were talking about it on the fan sites and all that, so we sort of just had to put that in, and we had no idea how to do that.
My job is to basically play the correct animation on Hitman at the correct time. Regarding just a simple example, if the user moves the hero forward, then I have to play on him the run forward or walk forward animation. Now you can see that Hitman is holding the gun normally, but as when he closes to the NPCs, he hides the gun behind his back.
What you've got on screen now is the new and improved Hitman. Basically what we do is we go in, we set up a set of bones to control the face expressions, and then we go in and tell each vertex how to behave compared to these bones. Basically you just do this for each point, and this is just not the head, it's like what you do for the entire body. Basically we model the whole thing, then we do a really high-res version of the character as well. This is about 1.6 million polygons as compared to 3,000 in the entire character in game. So we take all this information and we put it into a texture map. When we start to paint the skin tones and all that stuff, we use the high-res model as a base to start off on, but the actual normal mapping looks like this, and doesn't look too pretty really, but it creates a more smooth shape and puts in the small details as wrinkles and stuff like that you wouldn't otherwise really see. You can paint them in, but they wouldn't respond to the lighting as this does. There you can really tell the difference between having normal maps and no normal maps. So it makes a lot of difference.
Well, the level design in Hitman Blood Money is extremely ambitious. It's only 13 levels, but the levels are extremely huge.
Stylistically, we decided that if you have a dark humor and a dark job and the missions, everything is just dark and scary, then what can actually make that even more dark and scary is if you do it in environments that are not. We just took all the coolest places in America, from the deep dark southern places to the posh parties of Las Vegas. This stuff everybody can relate to, and if people haven't seen it for real, they still have an idea about it, and when they then see it and when we sort of replicated realism, it's just going to it's like being there.
Yeah, for example, on this level there was this baby room, which is a baby room for like a baby around 6 months old or something. So you have like this baby room with the crib and everything. And the interesting thing was that meanwhile I actually started building it, I myself got a son, my first child. So it's quite interesting to build it, because I just pretty much copied our own baby room into the game. Obviously I had to change it of copyright issues, but otherwise from that, the crib looks quite similar, the carpet looks quite similar. It was quite easy to build it and get the right mood for it, because I could relate to it. I mean, I was building it virtually at work, and when I came home I actually was building it in real life, so it's quite interesting.
All the levels are based on real life locations, and either it's specific buildings or it's specific parts of a town that we sent teams out to research.
The lighting is very important. Lighting goes hand in hand with the music and the score of it. Sound has more importance to me. I think it's half of the game. So we very focused on small details, noises and stuff.
Well, most of them, they are a combination of sounds. I mean, when you hit the guy with a hammer from behind, that's actually a footstep sound where you put your foot into mud.
Jesper Kuhl, he's the composer, and he's working with Pierre Földes, another composer. He's the guy who's arranging Jesper's music. And then we actually recording it with the Budapest Symphony Orchestra. And I have to say, this is probably one of the best orchestras you can have the pleasure to work with.
Well, Hitman has always been quite a realistic game, and we try to take that even further with this one.
If you get into a firefight and there are civilians that feel cornered, if there are guns lying around, they'll pick it up and begin attacking Hitman as well.
You can play the game and then the game responds to your actions in a much more fluid way.
The characters, they aren't just disappearing when you kill them, they will stay on the ground until someone comes and picks them up in a body bag.
One of the things I really like is the accident kills, and I'm probably a horrible person for it, but I really do like pushing people downstairs.
And if the game peaks now, that's exactly where you have to turn everything upside down.
I have expectations towards the media, and specifically the Hitman franchise, to bring it to a point where you actually look at it and say, this is so close to an art form as you can get.
We are just a bunch of kids playing around with computer games really here. We're having a really good time, but it's very, very tough work. Probably see how dark my eyes are. I've been working on Hitman for so long now.
5 of us started out in what you call the demo scene in Denmark. This is young kids doing reverse engineering, doing swapping discs at that point. They just wanted to do games, and you couldn't do that in Denmark in mid-80s, so they drifted somehow, west over. It's ended up in UK, ended up in North America. And 10 years later, they came back to Copenhagen. We decided to set up a company. Most of the publishers were pretty interested in what we were doing. It was, at that point, a very preliminary Hitman character. It should be a badass character, a politically non-correct character, a provocative type of guy, although very limited space for him to develop because he wasn't a real human, he was a clone. And these guys at some point team up to create this perfect human being using their own genes. Hitman starting out with the patricide. Hitman is killing his fathers basically. And those guys, again, they are originated in the very old Greek myth about Icarus. It's about hybrids. Human beings strive for becoming a god or something. Do the impossible and always want to be even post-human. You can see today. You can even change your organs. We're talking about eternal life. We're talking about mapping the DNA and stuff. All totally unmentionable. If you really think about it, it's outrageous, right? And that's what happens to this Hitman guy. He's the perfect human being. He's a kind of Übermensch, and finally he turns against his creators, and obviously greed comes in between and ends as a tragedy, basically. Ends with a patricide. He's going to kill these guys one by one. You have quite intriguing storyline, and I'm not going to reveal all of it because it's going to be a surprise for gamers buying the game. But and I don't want to spoil that. But it is as complex as I've seen any game. There's small stuff there, some tiny details that we developed over the years as an in-house piece of technology that helps us making these characters more complex, even more complex than they've been in the previous games.
Dr. Ortmeyer created Mr. 47. No one else has successfully created a Class 1 human clone. Dr. Ortmeyer literally wrote the book.
Our goal was to, when you grab the controller or keyboard, whatever, and played the game, everything had to feel new. Like, it had to feel 100% like this is a new Hitman game. So we, first of all, we changed the control system to have a more elaborate camera control system that is more free, which gives you, since it's a very cinematic game, gives you a lot of possibility of staging your hits and all that, and seeing it from different angles instead of having the stick cam that we had previously. We also developed a new engine, not a patched up previous engine, but a new render engine that now on platforms that supported supports all kinds of shader models and whatever. We even have these shader models hacked in on PS2. And we have a new script engine, and we have new AI behavior totally made up from the bottom. And all that makes what was the tools that we needed to make the coherent gameplay that we wanted. Like, we have so many new features that if everything was sort of anarchistically implemented, then it would just become too confusing from the player perspective. So things we did to make sure that this wouldn't happen was, like, we had this immensely thorough design document that explained in detail every level, everything, how it had to be implemented, and we've made this very, very elaborate training level. We did some training levels on previous games, but they were like, yeah, take this, play around with it, and see if you can figure it out. But right now we have like a linear, very opposite to the game, a very linear progressing level, which is entertaining and very nicely looking, that takes you through all the things that you can do in the game. So when you start the first actual open-ended level, you'll have this, huge set of tricks that you can play around with and figure out how it actually works when you're not doing it in a controlled environment.
There is an enormous amount of details put into the game, both in graphics and in gameplay. I mean, the gameplay programmers and the scripters have put in lots of extra little details in how the NPCs react to certain things that happens on the level, or they will do things on their own. I mean, the whole, if you just stand still in Hitman and look on the map, you'll see that all the characters are actually moving about, even though you're on a totally different location in the level. So they will do whatever they do, regardless of you being there or not.
The thing is that since we changed a lot of our core technology, it has freed up some room for the script and for the AI, which has enabled us to do more on the same platforms, to push both the PS2 and the Xbox even more to the limit of what they can do. We provide something that on the surface might look easy, but in reality might not be. So it's very much up to the player how they want to go about fulfilling the mission, accomplishing the mission. The open-ended part of the gameplay is that once you start out, you're not forced to enter through the front door or sneak around back. You can decide what you want to do. You can hang back for a while, just try to get your bearings, try to figure out what's actually going on in this area, what are people doing. The player can then decide, I want to play Hitman as the guy who walks boldly in through the front door and waves hi to the bellboy and goes on. Nobody sees anything. In a moment I'll be walking right back out nobody notice anything, or say, well, this guy in here, he's really nasty character, he deserves to be put down, and I'm gonna kick in the front door, guns blazing. The feeling you get when you play the game, that when you're walking through the level, you shouldn't be in situations where all of a sudden 10 guards come rushing at you, guns blazing, and you say, why did that happen? This time around, it's much better in that regard, that you go somewhere where you're not supposed to be, people come say, hey, you get out of here, or you'll find clues in how other characters on the level behave, what they do, where you can go, what you can do, and put in a lot more of these hints.
Hitman has always been quite a realistic game, and we try to take that even further with this one, and that goes both for the gameplay and the architecture and all the items around you. Also, all the levels are based on real life locations, and either it's specific buildings or it's specific parts of a town that we sent teams out to research, and the architects take whatever they can from real life or specific buildings or monuments or whatever, and model it in to fit with the level design. We have huge photo libraries from, for instance, Mardi Gras or New Orleans, which first there was a team going over, and then luckily we had a guy working here that actually came from New Orleans, so he took a lot of pictures second time around when we found out exactly what we needed, like all these little details like the door handles and telephone boxes, and I mean there are so many things that kind of defines a specific place that we try to take as much as possible and integrate it into the game.
We had basically had levels all over the world before, and there is so many cool things about America that you know, in all its posh glamour, and sometimes it gets vulgar and all that, but it's people know it and people respect it in that awkward way. So like the casinos of Vegas, and you know, everybody knows the White House, and it's all like clouded in mystery, and it's just something we didn't do, and it's so obvious to do, and it was fun to do also. We don't only have them in the States. I mean, there is still, you know, intercontinental travel in the game, but we just took all the coolest places in America, from the, you know, deep dark southern places to, you know, the posh parties of Las Vegas. It sort of has it all.
The Mardi Gras level is very special, since I mean, Mardi Gras is about a lot of people. And that was one of the main objective in that level, was to try and achieve that feeling of a lot of people. When I was programming the rest of the level, I would walk into the street and it would just be empty. I had a sort of a placeholder sound of a crowd cheering, but I had no idea how it was going to look. And in the end, when we finally got it into the level, it was just, I mean, it was mind-blowing to just walk into the street and there was just people everywhere. The system can actually manage 3,000 characters simultaneously on the level. I've never seen anything like that in any previous game. I mean, we have it running on the PlayStation 2 and on the Xbox and the PC, so it's really fantastic.
It's a little bit of a cliche, but it always works pretty well. But we have the hunter become the hunted. So we have this semi-failed clone who is like tracking down Hitman all throughout the storyline, and who he, of course, will have a confrontation with at some point. And what's really cool about that is more than the fact that it's his nemesis and all that. It's the fact that he's like this dysfunctional clone. Like, he's really, really cool. He has a lot of this stuff, but he's just not stable. He's like a beta software thing or whatever. So, you know, these clones, they tend to die of cancer within time and all that. So they have this built-in, you know, anger, maybe, I don't know, jealousy towards him being a success. So that gives them sort of, even though they are also these cold, calculated assassins, it gives them like a reason to go after Hitman, because he is what they can never become. There is the other guy who has it all, but things were just screwed up for him by Hitman, and that's the other Nemesis character, which is the guy in the wheelchair, who sort of is the puppet master behind this whole chase. So I think there are some really solid characters in this game, actually, that makes the story interesting. Also because they have some really basic reasons to wanting to go after after 47 that everybody can relate to really easily. So it's not like artsy-fartsy in that way. It's good, understandable, cool characters that everybody will relate to. So the story will get appealing also if you're not a fan, I believe. I don't think you have to know about the previous games to think it's understand the situation and understand where everybody's coming from, actually. And there's also little cut sequences that don't really tell much story, but just hint stuff. Like, you have this albino character reading an article about where you are now, so you're sort of feeling that he's closing in on you, and of course in the end you're gonna meet him in the game and you're gonna have a showdown.
It's a completely new aspect to the Hitman game, that you actually you gain notoriety as you play through the different levels. So it's based on how much you're seen by other actors, if there are any witnesses seeing you do nasty stuff, and if you get caught on security cameras and things like that. So basically your notoriety will be built up if in those cases where there are witnesses and things like that, and then it changes the behavior of characters on the rest of the levels. So for instance, if your notoriety goes up, then the civilians will begin recognizing you if they get a good look at you and things like that. So it'll make the rest of the game more difficult if you get seen too much.
Jesus Christ! You're that bald killer! Police! Someone!
There are a number of ways to bribe your way out of the notoriety. So you can bribe the witnesses to get rid of them, and you can bribe police officers, and you can actually also more or less buy a whole new identity, which will more or less just clear your whole notoriety. But also, and more importantly, you can use them for upgrading your weapons. So you can actually buy upgrades for a range of weapons, where you can get bigger silencers, you can get a bigger scope on your sniper rifle, and you can get larger clips with ammunition and armor-piercing ammunition. But also there's a number of special items, so you can actually you can upgrade your lockpick, so you can get a lockpick that works even faster. And so there's a lot of items that you can actually and upgrades for the weapons that you can use your money.
Some of us have been thinking that Hitman back in the old days was kind of like a tank. He couldn't do very much. It was like sliding across the ground, and now he has much more flexible movement. He can jump, he can climb up ledges and scale walls and all that. And when we sat down, the programmers, we was sitting down and talking about how should we do this, and so just basically planning out the functionality. And there are some guys who specializes in the Hitman movement and control and camera control.
With Hitman Blood Money, we actually made a game where Hitman has been taken to a whole other level of a lot greater interactivity. Hitman can push people, he can headbutt people, there's a wide variety of close combat weapons. There's screwdrivers, there's fire extinguishers, there's hedge cutters and things like that.
Anything else? Excellent.
I would personally like to have those flaws, introduced for this character. He's far too perfect. Maybe, nobody's that perfect. So I obviously looking for some space where you can expose some weak spots. But good question. Would you make him fall in love, or would you do that? I don't think so. But how much space is there emotionally to develop the character? How much space is there to scratch the surface, of this perfection? I would like to bring it there where you don't want it to be, and then bring it back from there. It's difficult, but I think it can be done, and I think it will benefit the character and it will benefit the story as such.
Coming from an online background, it could be fun to see Hitman playing Hitman with other live players in a big world. Maybe not having like 100 or 200 Hitmans running around shooting at each other, but something a little bit more subtle. That would be fun. Really, really, really fun.
My favorite, I guess it differs depending on what you look at, but technologically my favorite bit is that in this whole next-gen era and stuff, that we managed to make a crowd system on a PlayStation 2. That's something that, that was ambitious when we decided to do it, and we thought that we would probably have to cut a gazillion corners, but having it end up like it did, like actually having hundreds of characters walking around on the PlayStation, that's way crazier than I ever imagined it would be. So that I really dig and I'm really proud of. And then I really like the level that takes place in where there's this heaven and hell decadent theme. Just going around there, and there is the karaoke, and there is the hell thing with all the ghosts and crowds again and all that. I just think it has an awesome feel.
The suburbia level is actually quite fun, since we have a clown that's been invited to a birthday party, and he has a slight problem with alcohol, so he walks around in this mafioso home and with the FBI agents, and takes a little sip out of the bottle once in a while, and then he blows up the balloons and the stuffed animals and things like that, and he's quite funny. Since there aren't really that much going on, he's actually walking around trying to entertain the FBI agents, who are just calm and doesn't notice him, but he just keeps on trucking.
There was also some Easter eggs involving dancing. You can actually get Hitman to do a dance, which is actually relatively easy to find for if someone's going looking for it. It basically involves standing still in a certain area where there is a party going on.
IO as a company has changed over the past years. It's been growing a lot, and of course when a company grows, a lot of things happen with the company. It was sold to Eidos as well, and that may have changed a little bit in the culture of the company as well. So, but I would say that it's a very friendly company, a very good atmosphere. We are just a bunch of kids playing around with computer games really here. We're having a really good time, but it's very, very tough work. Probably see how dark my eyes are. I've been working on Hitman for so long now.